Taking your car on a long road trip can be very stressful, and of course, if you're like me, you want to make sure you've done everything you can to make sure you're prepared in case anything bad happens. So today, in this video, we'll be going over some things you can check on your car before you leave, as well as some things that you can take with you to help save you in case something happens. This is my 2003 Saab 9-3, and around the time you're watching this video, I will be taking it to Portland, Oregon, which is about a 1,500-mile one-way trip to the Saab Owners Convention 2024. So round trip, I'll be putting about 3,000 miles on this car in the span of a week. There are so many things that we need to do to make sure the car is ready for the trip. We're going to be checking all of our fluids, doing a quick general inspection of the car, tires, belts, you name it. We're going to look at it and then also begin to pack some things that we want to include in our trunk, again, in case anything bad happens. So without further ado, let's start by popping the hood and checking out our fluids and some other items under here. Generally speaking, there are 5 fluids that we can check here: oil, coolant, transmission fluid, power steering, and our brake fluid. Depending on your car, checking some of these is easier than others. For example, my coolant here, I can see it sitting right between the seam and the coolant tank, so I know the level is good. Our transmission fluid, on the other hand, means we have to jack the car up, get underneath it, pull the dipstick out, and then inspect from there. Some cars, of course, have dipsticks at the top, some have them at the bottom, some don't have a dipstick at all. It really depends on the car. But one thing we can easily confirm right now is our oil. So generally speaking, your fluids you want to check while the car is hot. So the first thing I like to do is pull the dipstick out and wipe all the fluid off it. And we stick it back in, remove it, and we can check our level. This dipstick is fairly easy to read. You can see a minimum and maximum line, and our oil is just below the maximum line, so we know that it is filled just as it should be. Looking at our brake fluid reservoir, this isn't really a fluid that you'd need to worry about, but you can kind of jiggle it and see it's a bit dirty, but there is a clear line where the fluid is at. There's a max marker here, a min marker here. You can see we're well within spec on that, so we're good on our brake fluid. Power steering on my particular car is all just held in a little reservoir right here. Sometimes there's a tank off to the side. It just kind of depends. But for this, I have to actually pull the cap off, and then there is a couple of markers on here. You can see a high and a low marker, so I'll do the same thing I did with oil. Close that. Pull it back out, and sometimes when the fluid is hard to read, you can just kind of place it on the towel, and that'll give you a good gauge of where the fluid level is at. So here you can see we're right at the max level. If you'd like to go more in depth, you can go around and check all your hoses, make sure you're not seeing any leaks, any cracks, any wear in the hoses, get underneath the car, inspect things further. It's all up to how paranoid you want to be, how sure you want to be that your car is 100% good. Of course, the newer the car, the less likely there will be an issue. One other thing I will recommend checking though is your serpentine belt. So on my car, it happens to be here. You'll want to go ahead, feel the belt, twist it around, kind of check to see if the ribs have any sort of cracks in them, and make sure that that serpentine belt doesn't look like it's going to snap on you during your drive, because that could leave you stranded. Next, let's discuss things you should bring with you in your trunk. Now I have quite a few items back here. The first item I have here is a portable tire inflator kit. This is great if your tire pressures just happen to be a little low, or if you have a slow leak. You can use this on the go to get it pumped up. And I want to thank Synkwire for sponsoring today's video. Let's take a bit more of an in-depth look at some of the features this thing has. Synkwire's portable air inflator is extremely small and compact. I mean, you can see it fits in the size of my hand. It's about the size of your phone, just 4 or 5 times thicker. Very lightweight. It has a gigantic LED screen that has a bunch of different features, so you can actually set the PSI you want it inflated to, and then this will tell you your current PSI. There's a few different settings you can go through, like for example up here we have a car, up here we have a bike, and you can see it actually changes the PSI, for example a basketball, based on what setting you're at. So this is my personal setting. I just have it at 35 PSI because that's what I always inflate my tires to, but you can of course always change that. It comes with a wide variety of adapters, so you can use it again, not just on a car, your bike, your sports balls. That sounds weird to say that word. It comes with some extra valve stem caps, of course, a charging cable, and your little adapter. So let's give this thing a try and see how well it works. I honestly lately have been using this as opposed to pulling out my big giant noisy air compressor because it's much easier. And once it seals, we'll turn it back on. You can see we're actually at 33.5 PSI. So I want to get it up to 35 like I have set. I just hit the power. You can see how fast that inflates. I'm really impressed with how efficient it is. It's really not any slower than my actual tank air pump. So fantastic product. Thank you to Sinkwire for sponsoring this video. Again, I don't like to partner with companies that don't make good products, so this is genuinely a good product. Check them out. It'll be linked at the top of the description if you're interested in purchasing one. In addition to that, I have a portable jump pack here, so that way if I do get stranded with a dead battery and there's not another car around, I can easily jump start the car myself. I also have a tire repair plug kit, so if you get a nail in your tire, you can use one of these to essentially plug the tire and help limp yourself to the next destination. This was like 12 bucks on Amazon. Highly recommend having one of these. We just have some spare fluids, some water, some coolant, oil, and then I also have tools. I like to bring, you know, not everything in my toolbox, but some of the essentials, just my sockets, some wrenches, pliers, vice grips, some extensions, good mix of, you know, a little bit of everything, some zip ties, just in case something happens, and of course some gloves too. I'd also recommend getting maybe a case of water in case you do get stranded to keep yourself hydrated and safe. If you don't have a relatively complete tool set like I do, you can go to Harbor Freight or Walmart or something. You don't need some Snap-on quality tools, just a small set that you can stick in your trunk to get you by in a pinch. Checking your tires is another important item. So the easiest way to know if your tires are good or not is to just use the old trick of taking a penny. You use Lincoln's head, and if you can't see part of Lincoln's head, you know that your tires are good. Right here on mine, you can see it's up to his nose is pretty much covered, so I have plenty of tread left on these tires. If you can't see any of his head, meaning if it's kind of looking like this right here, it does mean it's time for new tires. I recommend also doing this with your spare if you have it. Last thing we'll check is our brakes. These are pretty easy to do. You just kind of need to slide in there and make sure that your pads still have life on them. And mine, you can see, do have a good bit of pad left on them. Basically, if they're not screeching when you're braking, you should be good to go, because all brake pads have little metal pieces embedded in them. When the pads get down towards the end, they start to make noise. That's how you know it's time to replace your pads. Well, I hope everyone watching found this video useful and informative in one way or another, helping to prepare for a road trip, things you should check, things you should bring with you to be safe, just in case, God forbid, anything happens. Make sure you're well rested, especially if you're doing a long road trip like I am. Don't drive when you're tired. It can only lead to bad things. But thank you so much to Sinkwire for sponsoring this video. Again, if you're interested in picking up a portable air pump, highly recommend it. It'll be linked at the top of the description. That's all for today though. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.